Stephen DiMare, welcome to Hey Mister, how about this? Thank you for taking the time to uh, have conversation here. I've been looking forward to this, and we've been talking about trying to do this for, I guess, a couple months now, a few months now. So thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely. Excited to be here. Thanks, man.
Yeah. And just like with the others that I've been able to do, everyone's going to be able to just kind of be looking into a conversation that we're going to get to have and get to talk about things that we've talked about before, topics we've talked about before. And this is why I'm excited to be recording it because uh, in those times that we've talked about the things that we've talked about, it's always been a blessing to me. And it's always been very beneficial to me. I didn't say any of that ahead of time before we started recording because I wanted to make sure I got that in. And that you've been a huge encouragement to me and how you've navigated even the things that we're going to talk about and navigated it with trust and joy in the Lord. So, with that being said, formally introduced Stephen DiMare, which it's funny saying your last name. I never see your last name because in my phone I have your contacts still as Stephen Popsicle from from when we first hung out at Shepherd's Conference. How many years ago? I don't know.
Uh, 2016, so eight,
Okay.
no, 2017,
Okay,
seven
yeah.
years. Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's been a while, and I've made the very deliberate decision to not change that in my phone. So you're Stephen Popsicle still. Sorry.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you. It's a badge of honor.
yeah, but Stephen, you the not only are you a good friend, not only are you a brother in Christ, but you have done quite a bit in the business world, in the even entrepreneurial world, and I've gotten to see your creativity kind of unleashed in a lot of that, and still maintaining your Christian values and honoring the Lord. And so specifically as we have this conversation, I want to really be gearing this toward that side of things and really help, excuse me, really help those who are listening and watching to think through and navigate on their own some of these things, and even those who maybe aren't interested in any kind of business stuff at all, if nothing else, they'll be able to hear how the Lord has helped you navigate all of these things. So. Before getting into your various businesses that you started and how you thought through all those things, I want to first allow you to share your testimony, share how the Lord saved you. We'll give us the brief version of that, and then we'll just kind of see where the conversation goes.
Sounds good. Yeah. So, testimony is my parents were and still are both believers. So that's sweet. Got born into a Christian home, and they're both at least second generation. I think on my mom's side, maybe fourth or fifth generation believers. So
Oh,
that's
cool.
really sweet. And so I was raised in a Christian home with a in an independent Bible church environment, if you're familiar with that
Okay.
kind of movement. And
Well,
so Bible was definitely front and center growing up, which is sweet. Um, and it's more of a congregational type church. And it was sweet. I had a great childhood. I did not have many obstacles. And
yeah.
I felt like, and I was affirmed in my belief in Christ at like age 5, with
Mm,
kind of presented with the heaven and hell paradigm, and
yeah.
God sounded great, and that was wonderful, and I really stuck to that for a long time. But it wasn't until I got to college, and really by the time I hit 21, that finally the duality of my life really
Mm,
caught up to me, and I really realized that there was like a major cognitive dissonance between this eternal knowledge that I was like counting on for, like, okay, that's my ticket out of here, versus
mhm.
like how I was living my life. And so I would say, for those that are familiar with kind of a typical self-deceived um, church kid, that
Mm,
was me. And I was self-deceived in the sense of, like, I didn't know. I didn't know that.
yeah.
I didn't believe. I was totally unfamiliar with like the idea of the lordship of Christ, and he was definitely not Lord of my life. Um, so he was Lord of
Yeah.
my religious beliefs, or my like
Mm,
my like hope in the afterlife. I think it made sense to me. It was logical to me, but there was no lordship. And so, anyway, God was gracious, and I feel like disciplining me and really just kind of bringing my sin up upon my head to where I finally was able to wake up one day and realize, like, oh wow, like I'm a sinner in need of God's
Yeah.
grace.
Mm.
And for people that came to Christ later, or that's probably seems like very obvious, but for a self-deceived church kid, that
Hmm.
realization was just everything. And so
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
I ran to Christ, and he was gracious to forgive me and to restore me. And then, fortunately, then all of that, the knowledge and the Bible and the training that had been put into me over the
Hmm.
years was finally able to be made useful
Yeah.
in my life. And so, yeah, so I really feel like 21 is when I was when I was
Yeah.
saved, and then the God's been faithful to grow
Hmm.
me since then and mature me, and I'm looking forward to what he's got left, because
Yeah.
I know I've still got a long way to go.
Yeah. I mean, let me ask you. So, and I said brief, but I as I'm hearing you talk about this, I think, man, there are a lot, and including myself, but there are a lot of even young people, and I think of even a lot of my students. They're going to a Christian school. Many of them are growing up in Christian homes. Many are not, but many are growing up in Christian homes, and even those in our churches that we know that are going to have a very similar testimony to where Christianity was just it was just a part of every aspect of their lives, right? To not, and I assume you say the same about yourself, to not have kind of even a season of life where you didn't think that the biblical worldview was the right one, or that Jesus
Yeah,
was real, or just that God was real, and all of those things, maybe questioning at times, but not like that was your view on everything, right? And so, and I know a lot of people and even a lot of kids and a lot of youth that are in that current season. How would you help them to think uh to think through their walk with the Lord, their position before the Lord, and even for those who would say, no, I believe I'm Christian. You would have said the same thing. I would have said the same thing at those
yeah.
ages. So what are some things, maybe put it this way, what are some things that you would go back and tell 13, 14, 15-year-old Stephen Popsicle, Stephen DiMare. Everyone's really confused who doesn't know why I'm calling you that. We'll get to that, guys, I promise. Um, the for what would you go back and tell yourself? What are some questions you would ask? What are some things that you would tell yourself to help discern and make clear what it is that it took till you were 21 to see?
Yeah, it's a helpful question. And obviously baked into that, unfortunately, is just, and I say unfortunately, but it's just God's sovereignty, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah, yeah.
until the scales get pulled off, it's hard to see. You got
Hmm.
people saying those things to you. Probably, I've probably been
Yeah,
getting quality gospel messages like my whole youth, and I'm like, yeah, that's right. I'm on board. I wish these other people would figure this stuff out,
yeah, yeah.
because we're here.
Uh-huh.
But I was just in Isaiah 55, and thinking about like how, like, there's the call of God to seek him while he's near,
Mm.
and to pursue him, and to repent and to be restored. And so
Yeah.
I would I think if I could go back and talk to my 13-year-old self, I would really challenge myself on, like, hey, what does repentance look like in your life? How would you define that?
Mm.
What do you think, what do you think the lordship of Christ means? He's your savior, but what do you think it means for him to be Lord of your life? What do you think
Mm.
that means about your thought life? And in Isaiah 55, he says, for the unrighteous man to forsake his unrighteous thoughts, right?
Mm.
And I think that
Yeah.
I entertained a world of unrighteousness in my thought life, and thought that if it didn't bleed out into my like the physical world, then that was me doing a good job. That was keeping the sin
Yeah.
at bay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think that if I had had people challenging my thought life back then and challenging me towards like true repentance
Yeah.
and really helping call out my like the lies I was telling myself,
Mm.
um, not that that would have saved me, but I think that would have exposed the the duality like a lot
Yeah.
earlier to show me like, hey, you're not living for Christ actually, and it's
Yeah.
not enough to just assent to the facts. You know, that was I struggled with assurance all growing up, and of course I did because I didn't. There was no obedience really
Yeah.
in my heart. I was sticking to a set of rules, but
Mm.
you know, the rules of God were very similar to the rules of my parents. You know, don't play on the stairs, don't eat dessert first. You know,
Yeah.
don't whatever commit murder, don't commit adultery. Like all of that
Yeah.
stuff was kind of bound up together, and I think for church
Yeah.
kids, it's really hard to separate those things. And so,
Bro,
but the
do you
heart that
realize you
yeah,
just went from don't eat dessert first to don't murder? That was quite the jump, bro. But keep going.
I'm
That's
just, I'm just saying they're all in the same they're all in the same camp of like things not to do.
Man, that is brutal, bro. That is sorry, keep going. I know I broke your train of thought, but that
I like obviously there's some differences in like
yeah,
consequences
there's
between those
right,
two
right,
things.
right.
But disobedience to parents is lumped in with some
That's
pretty ugly
right.
stuff
Yeah,
in
you're
some of those
right.
lists
You're
in the New
spot on.
Testament. So
Yep, yep. Yeah.
um but yeah,
Um,
that's what I would want for kids
mhm,
now. And that's what I see with the men in our church as they're ministering, especially to youth, is
mhm.
really just kind of going after the heart. And I just didn't. I think that I had a lot of people around me, and you know, I don't hold them accountable. I'm accountable for my own sin, but I had a lot of people that were thinking, "Hey, this kid's doing great, and he's doing a lot
Mhm.
better than the other kids, and you know, he's put together." And so I didn't have anybody really getting after the the hard issues for me.
Yeah. No, that's good. And I would resonate with that. I was actually just watching a clip of a sermon from the church I grew up in, and the as grateful as I am that they would call out sin and call people to repentance, the what I grew up regularly hearing, this is an excuse, right? I'm responsible for my own sin before the Lord and lack of repentance. And to your point, I'm sure I know there were clear calls away from my sin. But the sad thing was that once again, the what this pastor was pushing people toward was this emotional experience that they were calling, the presence of the Lord. And when you're in the presence of the Lord, that's when you realize your sin, and it's all this experience, this emotional thing.
Yeah,
I grew up hearing that. And so guess what? If you don't feel that, the sin is still there, but there's a lot less of a pull away from it when Sunday's coming, and that's where you're going to feel that experience. And maybe there's an altar call, maybe there's not, that I'll go down to. But to truly turn from sin toward righteousness in everyday life, yeah, that was a missing component for me for sure. One question, maybe you've asked yourself this before, but have you ever wondered, or how did you, maybe I'm going to word this differently. How did you navigate the difference between, okay, I realized I wasn't saved and now I'm saved versus now I'm even just a more mature adult who's understanding some more theology, some more things about God, some more aspects about the gospel, even a deeper understanding about sin, and then also I'm able to articulate some of these things better. Um, what were some things going on in your heart between like, well, how do I know this is just maturity and better articulation and understanding versus now true salvation?
yeah. In my particular testimony, I there was a lot of clarity in the difference between those things in the sense that
Gotcha.
um, I was just really just kind of handed over to my like simple desires. I've been really
Mm,
at odds. I felt, and this would be another test for like church kids would be like, do you feel like God's laws, or do you feel like the prescriptions of like behavior and obedience in the Bible are freeing or that they're shackling? Like, do you
Mm,
think it's holding you back, or do you think that this is like, man, thank God that He told us, He gave us some direction here. This is so helpful. This really frees me to be able to know how to live my
mm,
life in a way that honors Him and brings peace. And obviously that's how I feel now. Is when I read God's clear commands, I'm like, it's such a drink of fresh water. It's like, oh,
yeah,
the clarity
that's good.
and a help. And when I was growing up, it was the opposite. It was a
Mm,
shackle. I would hear testimonies of people in their 50s that came to Christ late, and they would say, like, oh, yeah, I lived this life of debauchery and I did all this crazy stuff, and then God saved me. And I would think, uh, in a perverted way, as like a church kid, like, man, but I had to get saved like young, so I didn't get to do all of
mm.
the. I didn't get to have my
Like you
like
missed
sinful
out.
phase. I missed out. I didn't get to
Yeah,
do all. I didn't get to scratch that itch, and now
yeah,
I'm being held to these standards,
yeah, yeah.
and that really shows the heart. Like, I'm being these God's laws and
That's
God's
great,
word are
man.
really holding me back, and so finally, like when I was around 21, like the dam broke, and I just like was basically just like and this is the weird thing. I never stopped believing that Jesus was the Messiah, that is the Messiah.
Hmm.
I never stopped believing in God. I never stopped believing that the Bible was 100% true. But I just um since I was all of my self-righteousness was obviously
Hmm.
was in myself. All of my resistance against sin was not because I loved God, but just because like I just like I didn't want to be in the wrong.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so that kind of I've heard it described as like kind of like white knuckled grip on my
Yeah.
unrighteousness. You can't hold it. You can't hold back the dam on that. And so
Mm,
eventually I was given over to my sin. I found myself in a sinful relationship and just kind of enslaved to alcohol and a variety of other things as a young man.
hmm.
And it had been by degrees and by measures like a frog in boiling water kind of a thing. So I hadn't even realized what had happened until, but by God's grace, one day morning I woke up and was just realized like I was like it was kind of like Nathan pointing the finger at David, and it's just like a
Mm,
moment of realizing like I am this sinful man. I'm like this person that deserves hell. And the question
yeah.
that really like needled me, that just totally like sapped me of like my life energy was like, by what measure would you say that you're saved?
Mm,
Like what would you like if God was here, like if you died right now and God was like, hey, are you saved? Do you believe in Christ? I said, yeah. And he's like, oh, great. It just, you have any, well, like how would, like on what grounds would you say that you believe that? And I just looked at my life and I'm like, there's nothing here. There's not one thing
mm.
that
Yeah.
which would demonstrate that I actually believe in any of this. And I I was just like I was cut to the heart, and that's
Wow.
when I realized like I'm like damned unless
Yeah.
like I'm hidden Christ. And so for me, the moment was pretty sharp.
Wow.
Um,
Well,
so
yeah, you almost had a vivid picture of if someone plucked a piece of fruit from your tree, was it fruit of the spirit of the world? Then no fruit of the spirit, no, yeah, yeah, no byproduct of true faith of what you were professing. Hmm.
yeah,
So
yeah,
so that is 21-year-old Stephen DiMare. Okay, I'm going to read something here, and thank you for sharing all of that. I was not planning on going into any of that, but man, that right there, I'm hoping will encourage a lot. I might even just play some of that section for my class here in the next week because I think it'll be helpful for him to hear. But that's 21-year-old Stephen DiMare. I want to read something here from thepennyhoarder.com. It says 3 months. That's how long it took Stephen DiMare to transform a stranger's suggestion into a business. Armed with a history degree from the University of Florida, DiMare knew he wanted to start a business, perhaps open a coffee shop. He was 24 at the time. So we just jumped in a 3 year time machine and jumped forward about 3 years. Get us up to speed, bro. So now you're a believer, um, and you enter into, or at least you start to entertain thoughts of opening up a business, all of that. Yeah, man. How did all of this start? Give people a little bit of Actually, you know what? This I want to do this because people may be like, okay, why do we care if this guy started a business? All right. Um, I want you to really quick list off all of the businesses that you have started, that you have begun. And I know you're probably, I know this is like the kind of, you're not tooting your own horn. I'm asking, this is for think about this just for historical data. What are the businesses that you have started?
Um, yeah, so the first real business that I started was the Hippo, which is a gourmet popsicle shop. That was the first
Okay.
one when I was 24.
Okay.
And the next one was a French macaron shop called Bon Ami, which
Okay.
is RIP, is no longer with us.
Okay.
Um, and I started Cousteau's. It's a waffle and milkshake bar. Not a real bar, but just a waffle and
Yeah,
milkshake
yeah,
bar.
yeah.
And then I started the Hippo Cafe, which was like a sandwich and coffee shop that also sold popsicles.
Yeah.
And let's see, started a gourmet grilled cheese shop called Maker's Melt, also no
Okay.
longer with us. Hippo Cafe is also no longer with us. Started a coffee shop called Wyatt's that is still here, but I sold it, and so it's another sweet family that's running that now in Gainesville.
Cool.
Um, let's see, I started Mayday Ice Cream, which is like a really like an artisan ice cream shop, and that
Hmm.
one's still here. That one's still very much going.
Yeah.
That's sweet. Um, and now this people are probably getting bored. Like, yeah, okay,
No, no,
just
no, we're
different
not. No.
combinations of ice cream and popsicles and
Yeah. So
food. But
that's seven that you mentioned. You missed one
and
though.
then there's two. There's
Okay.
Mustache, which is
There it is.
Merchant
Yeah.
of Man Crafts. So it's
Yeah.
a man-centric like boutique. We sell like axes and bow ties and beard oil. And then from that, we also started a brand of men's grooming products called Oak and Ads, which is makes like beard balm and beard oils. And
Which
then
I
also there's
personally enjoy. I've tried, bro, I've tried because we're in New York now. I've tried three or four other beard oils since my wife got me yours for Christmas a couple years ago. None of them compare. And I'm not just saying that. I literally like I've been given some as gifts. I've bought some from local stores. I've ordered some online. And literally none of them, I don't care for any of them. My wife doesn't like the scents of the other ones. So well done. Well done. But
thanks,
good.
man.
Yeah.
And then I think last one not least is the board game Black Hole Rainbows,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that was launched a couple years ago. So I think
Very cool.
that's the there are some other smaller ones that won't get mentioned, but those are the main ones that
Cool.
I would
All
mention
right.
on a podcast.
Awesome, man. Yeah. So that's I want to ask you off the podcast now what those are. But the yeah, the so that's what 9 or 10 I think that you just listed there. And other than just a few of them, most of them have been fairly successful by the grace of God. And so I
Yeah.
just wanted people to kind of hear some of that context real quick. We're going to rewind the tape a little bit to how all of this started, your very first business. So again, I just wanted people to hear some of that before getting into how you got into all of this. So rewind, 24 years old, thinking about coffee shop, etc.
Yeah, I really wanted to open a coffee shop. I loved coffee. So that was like my first passion was really wanting to open it. So I spent most of the back 2 or 3 years of college thinking about planning this like coffee shop I wanted to open. But then after I got out of school, 2010, which by the way, to correct earlier, I actually did not get my diploma. So want to clarify
Okay,
that I didn't do my last
gotcha.
paper. Didn't never turn in my last paper. So it would have been a history degree. I still need to finish the last paper and get it over to UF at some
Got
point. But I want to clear up the record on that.
all right.
I, but
Some history professor from University of Florida is like, no, no.
I'm gonna. I have an incomplete, so I need to turn it in.
Yeah,
That's another lesson
nice.
on self control and
There you
self
go.
discipline
Yeah,
that
yeah,
we can do on another podcast.
yeah, yeah.
But so when I came out, the job market was terrible, and
Mm.
so I took the first job that was offered to me, which was working as a hotel clerk in Montana at Big Sky, and a family friend was
Wow.
running a hotel up there, so. went up
Okay.
there, and that's where I kind of incubated. And while I was out there, I got this idea from a lady I sat next to on a plane. So that's what that article is referring to,
Yeah,
where I
yeah.
was sat next to this lady who was probably my parents' age, and she's like, "What are you doing with your life?" And I was like, "Hey, I'm starting this cool coffee shop. Well, let me tell you all about it." And this is my trajectory. I don't know when it's going to happen. And she was like, "Yeah, you should do popsicles in your coffee shop because you're in Florida. It's so hot there." And I was just like, at first I was like, no, that's not part of my vision, actually. Thanks for this. Everyone has a suggestion, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
then she was like, no, no, you can make them with fresh fruit. It could be really like fresh and flavorful. And by the end of the flight, I was like, this is such a cool idea. I love
Yeah.
this. And then pretty soon I was like, this is actually a more enticing idea for a first business than the coffee shop. And part
Hmm.
of it too is like, you have to understand like the culture at the time. Like obviously coffee shops are really proliferate now. But in 2010, like Starbucks had actually closed like 650 stores, like in the
Hmm.
2007, 2008 time span. A bunch of little coffee shops had all closed. And so it definitely felt like a kind of an intimidating march to
Hmm.
head that direction. And so I wanted to get there, but I thought, yeah, let's try. So when I was at the hotel with the oversight of my of the owner and my boss, I actually ended up starting to build a business plan for a popsicle shop and started making
Cool.
popsicles there and
Oh,
serving
okay.
little pieces of them to hotel guests and stuff like that to try to get
Oh,
some
cool.
feedback.
I
And
didn't know that. Yeah.
yeah, and so and Jeff Quackenbush, he was the guy I was under. He taught me everything I know about customer service, and really, it's a really sweet thing because great customer service is all about learning how to serve people. And learn
Yeah.
how to serve people means like you're not just doing what they ask you to do, you're thinking about what they might need and you're trying
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
provide that to them. And so obviously there's some really great overlap there with like people that want to be servants in the church. They're always like looking for a program or someone to, hey, tell me what to do. And it's just like look around and see what these are
Yeah.
fellow humans. Like they've all got needs. Why don't you just try to imagine those and start trying to meet those, and you'll
Yeah.
you'll figure out what they are very very quickly. And
Yeah.
so yeah, so after that I came back to St. Augustine, which is where I was born and raised, and
Hmm.
down in Florida. And God was gracious and really opened up a bunch of doors all at the same time. And I was able to start a popsicle shop in kind of the historic district, which is high on
Hmm.
tourism. So we had the foot traffic and
Yeah.
making pops from fresh fruit. And yeah, and it
That's
just
cool.
took off. Yeah.
Well, has that lady from the airplane ever come forward and been like, "That was me"? I mean, have
We connected on LinkedIn, and
okay, okay.
I sent her a message like early on. I was like, "Hey, thank you so
Hmm.
much. Like I actually that idea you gave me, I did
Hmm.
it. I went out and did it." And
That's cool.
I didn't hear back from her, but I
Okay.
think she was a very active lady. She had a lot going on.
Okay.
Just in business, and I don't know if she was a lawyer or something too, but I think what I was working on was a big deal to me, but I think it was like
Yeah.
fairly, she's probably got a
Just
lot of
yeah.
a lot of such emails coming in from other people. So
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Well, that's cool. That's cool. And I want to ask a couple questions. So with Hippo, and what's like the formal? It's Hippo Pops. That's the whole thing, right?
the Hippo Gourmet Ice Pops, that's like the
The
official, that's
Hippo
the
Gourmet.
trademark.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
Popsicle is an actual. That's a different brand, right? That's
It
a a registered a trademark thing.
it is, yeah. And so we
Okay.
use it like, we use it colloquially, but yeah,
Yes.
but we would never put it in
Formally.
like print
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
or like rarely because it doesn't belong to us. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Um, The how many Hippo stores? How many Hippo Pop stores are there right now?
There's five now.
Five,
Yeah.
and you guys are you can get me up to speed on this. You guys are still being sold in like grocery stores, things like that down there, like Publix and Whole Foods, or is that still going?
Yeah. We're still in Whole Foods and some natural food
Okay,
stores. We're not in Publix
cool.
anymore.
Okay, okay.
The popsicle side, we also do some co-packing, so where we're making pops for other companies. We
Okay.
don't make them for other popsicle companies, but we make
Yeah,
them for our biggest client right now is Universal Studios, and that's
awesome.
been a huge client. So that's been really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if someone goes to Universal Studios, where would they go? Like, how would they come across your pops? Where
If
would they
you
see
go
them?
to Secret Life of Pets, they have like a
Okay.
popsicle stand over there. Or if you go to
Okay.
the Minions section, they've got like a Minions popsicle stand.
Awesome.
You could find them there.
So those
Yeah.
are hippo pops. All right, awesome. Good to know. Actually, I was just talking to one of my students yesterday. They were in Florida last week, and they were in a different park, but um, now, now they know where they can get them. That's cool.
No, no,
So,
no.
uh, so hippo, and I want to ask, what is your favorite flavor? What is your favorite hippo pop flavor?
Oh, that's easy. Pineapple cilantro.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, pineapple cilantro is one of the earliest ones that was just like so weird and so different, and it's
yeah.
so delicious. It's so good. So obviously you have to like cilantro. You have to not think it tastes like soap. But if
Hmm.
you're a person that likes cilantro, it's just incredible. It's bright. It's fresh.
Yeah,
It's
I've had it. It's
amazing.
refreshing. It is. It is
Yeah,
refreshing. My favorite is
delicious.
still the horchata. That would still be my favorite
The
one.
espresso horchata or just the horchata?
Well, both actually. Both
Yeah,
are
yeah,
good.
they're both really
Um,
good.
but yeah, no, that's a refreshing one there. So you start this business, and how long was it that the Hippo Pops that was going before you started to get an itch to start something else and to and I'll circle back to some of the questions on Hippo, but just for a timeline's sake, how long was it only Hippo Pops approximately?
Um, for the first 2 or 3 years, like
Okay.
it was only hippo, and then maybe on like year 2 or 3 is when I started branching out into different concepts. And
Okay.
so that's what happens is once you kind of break the hurdle of like starting a business and like
Hmm.
understanding an industry enough to like make something that succeeds, you
Yeah.
start to realize like, oh wow, there's other opportunities. I have other interests and things like that. And at least so that's how it was for me. And I think I I really love the process of creation and making
Yeah.
things, and I love I really do love the free market in the sense that you can make something and see if people like it and see if
Hmm.
it adds enough value to them for them to want to pay you for it, and that's sweet. It's a huge blessing to get to do that and not be
Yeah.
locked in. Um, at the same time, I'm not one of these people that's like, yeah, I really popsicles were like I had to do popsicles. It was the thing, like
Right.
you know, I, it's like since I was a kid, it's like no, I mean I've always loved popsicles. That's true, but like I always loved food, and
Yeah.
so and so for me, the common theme between all of my brands is like making things.
Hmm.
I like to make things. I like to create things, and so all of my brands are like are an expression of that because that's what I'm interested in, and have an opportunity to do that. And I would caveat that with like saying I have an opportunity to do that. So I wouldn't say like, if we were
Yeah.
in a different culture or there were different
Hmm.
needs and I needed to go, be a lumberjack, I
Right.
wouldn't be like, well, I can't do that because that's not, I need to, God's
Yeah.
gifted me with this thing.
You've
Like,
got the
no,
beard for it
you,
at least. So
yeah, thank you.
yeah, yeah.
So we do whatever's needful, but I've been given like this great privilege of an opportunity to work on these
Hmm.
things. And so
Yeah.
it's a huge blessing.
Yeah. No, that's great. And we'll get to some of the maybe the challenges and joys and benefits of these things. But to move the ball forward as far as timeline and maybe give us a little bit of the higher altitude version of this, but you start to then venture into other businesses, starting other businesses. Maybe give us just again short timeline of a couple years into Hippo, and then all the way up to up and through Mayday.
Yeah, so the Hippo started to expand. I opened a few extra stores, and some of them didn't work. And so part of it was trying to figure out the first store succeeded, but then it was a real question mark of like what made it succeed? What's our secret sauce? And so I thought I knew what it was, but obviously I didn't because my next two stores that I opened failed, and so we had to
Hmm.
close those down. And so we're just trying to find out like what would work, like what about because what we were doing was so fruitful in our home
Hmm.
location, so what needed to be replicated to be able to like export it. And so eventually we figured out that it was like walking traffic and foot traffic was like a key because the
Hmm.
popsicle is like on a stick. And so that's like
Yeah.
you're mobile, you're on your feet, you don't eat stick food as much like sitting down. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
as we started to figure that out, we started to open more stores, and I did a huge expansion push. At one point we had 15 hippos.
Wow.
But
Wow.
then unfortunately, a lot of them did really well on year one, which is what kind of kept us going. But a
Mhm.
lot of that was like novelty traffic. And so it died
Gotcha.
off into stores that were like, wildly successful in year one, where we were like, this is incredible. We're like really doing an amazing job here. And
Yeah.
people are telling us we're doing great. Then just went off a cliff on year two. And I think it's just the product type and
Yeah.
format. And so that was a huge trial. I would say, it was about every other year ish over the last like 12 years. No, over
Wow.
the last 14 years. It was about every other year for the first 10 years that we were on the verge of bankruptcy, kind of a thing of
Wow.
like,
Wow.
this thing's going great. Oh, now we're about to die. It's going amazing. Oh,
Yeah.
we're about to die again.
Man.
And that was a huge learning process. And
Yeah.
I just had to learn to trust the Lord, you know, and then learn how to manage risk a little bit better. I was like
Hmm.
very like risk positive, which is good. You have to be that to a
Hmm.
degree to even get going, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of risk involved. But you can, um, once you get gains, you need to also be thinking about protecting the ground you've already gained and not keep
Hmm.
betting the farm every time,
Yeah.
And
That's
so
good.
that was something that I had to learn. And so then eventually in 2018, I've been thinking about doing ice cream for a while. And when my grilled cheese shop failed, I we still had time left on that lease, and so I pivoted that. And that's the big thing you do as an entrepreneur is you pivot. You're like, oh, that's not working. Let me pivot over here. Let me pivot
Yeah.
over here. You know, like the running back that's just trying to find the gap in the line,
Just
just
trying to
kind of
get through.
dancing
Yeah. Yeah.
around, looking how
Hmm.
am I going to get through? And so I opened an ice cream shop because I was like, man, I love ice cream, and no one's doing artisan ice cream in our area, and I would love to see
Yeah.
that happen. And it just took off. It was really unexpected. And so now, I would say for anyone listening, like our company's main source of like revenue and profit is ice cream from Mayday.
Mm.
But this was kind of started as just like a side project,
Wow.
and then as a lot of the hippos started failing, that was a surprise. We were able to convert a bunch of them because we still had time on our leases. So instead of just
Hmm.
having to eat that, which probably would have put the company under, we started pivoting and turning them into Maydays. And
Wow.
ice cream has a really broad appeal, and everyone loves
Yeah.
ice cream. And
Yeah.
so
That's right.
these
That's right.
stores that were like dying as popsicle shops, we turned them into an ice cream shop, and they were like profitable almost the next day.
Wow.
And so that was the grace of the Lord. Like it was the right moment,
Hmm.
because if we hadn't had that pivot, we would have been like the ship was going down. And so,
Wow, that's crazy. And I remember even during COVID when things were shutting down, I remember it was kind of fascinating just watching you and even the conversations that we were having as you were thinking through and then eventually implementing some of how you pivoted during that time where there so much was shut down. Maybe you can go into that briefly. COVID comes, everything's shut down. Go ahead and maybe describe how you guys what you changed and what you implemented during that time.
yeah, so with as everyone that lived through that, you remember how difficult it was. And what we did in the nutshell was we had to choose what we were going to focus on. And so for me, it was full-time employees, because full-time employees were finding all of their income here and likely didn't have other safety nets. And
Hmm.
so I had to figure out a way to keep full-time employees employed, which means like,
Yeah.
earning an income through providing value to the economy. And
Hmm.
so what I did early on, I think it was in March, like as COVID was starting to set in, just by the grace of God, we realized like, hey, if people can't come to us, we're going to need to go to them. So
Hmm.
before the vehicle shortage happened, I was able to, when no one was at the dealerships yet, I
Yeah.
went out and like bought like four Ford Transit vans and
Mm.
got them wrapped. And then that was our vehicle literally to bring ice cream and popsicles to neighborhoods. And
Yeah.
that was our big pivot. And so everyone was kind of focused on that. And we were doing home deliveries. We were driving neighborhoods with like playing music, and people were
Yeah.
coming out. It's like to buy popsicles and ice cream, and it
Yeah.
ended up being this huge win. Like we actually, we really benefited from obviously from the government's stimulus and things like that. That was like super
Hmm.
helpful for us. But before that came in, we had actually figured we had gotten to the point of being solvent again just by repurposing all of our managers
Wow.
and office staff and everything towards this like truck
That's
um,
so cool.
process. And
Yeah, and
so,
didn't it
yeah,
become a little bit of a social media thing too? I wasn't following because I'm not really on social media much, but weren't people also kind of looking to see like where the truck would be, and
yeah,
was that a thing? Yeah,
it
yeah,
was, we were posting constantly on social, like where we were. We put like a tracker on the van so you could like log on and see where it was because people would be like, everyone was trapped at home. And so we would
yeah.
have people, it was just like sweet and sad at the same time. We would have people reach out to us and be like, hey, my kid's been waiting with like their money by the door like since 9 a.m. this morning because you said
Oh
you're going to come to
wow,
our area, and it's like
wow.
3 p.m., 4 p.m. And so we also, it was a weird thing because we needed to be out because we needed to try to sell product and make money.
Yeah.
But people also, we also felt like this great need to like be out serving people because people
Mm,
were at home, and it was a hard time for a lot of people. And so, I don't want to
yeah.
over spiritualize like selling popsicles and ice cream, but we got a lot of extremely positive feedback from people saying like just think like it was a gratitude for like
Mm,
coming out into the neighborhoods and doing something. They're like, we haven't had anything good happening this week
yeah.
until the ice cream truck came, and like that was our big moment.
That's
So it's like,
cool. That's
wow,
cool. Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, that's fun, man. Yeah, and it's funny. Again, we're not over spiritualizing telling popsicles and ice cream, but thinking of what you were even just saying of serving in a church, of not only obviously you were doing this not to merely serve because you need to keep a business afloat and employees employed and paid, but kind of that instinct of, well, we can go and serve other people, and even to some extent kind of going out of your way, right, to do this. And so that's cool. That's neat to see some of that. I'm going to use that as, speaking of pivoting, I'm going to use that as a little bit of a pivot in in question here. You are unashamedly a Christian business owner, and you follow Christ, and the uh, worldview that you have, the perspective that you have on business and the world and others, and also just even your character and your the way that you're going to interact with others. That's going to be driven by a desire to honor the Lord and be faithful to what the Word says. Um, and so, being a Christian business owner, what maybe I'll ask it this way: have there been, and what were they? Maybe specific challenges to uh, keeping your keeping things, even the philosophy of how you go about doing business, keeping things honoring to the Lord, and keeping all of your values, your biblical values, in play, while at the same time striving to be a successful businessman and just keeping these businesses afloat. And yeah, maybe you could speak to some of that.
yeah. So just challenges of like staying faithful and being a
Hmm.
Christian in like the business environment.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Um, it's been it's first and foremost a blessing to be a Christian in business because
Mm.
we know what God expects of us, and I'm constantly trying to remind myself when I'm tempted to be stressed, or when I am stressed. I shouldn't even say tempted to be stressed. When I'm sinfully stressed, when I have sinful anxiety, I'm ministering to myself by reminding myself that like God doesn't expect us to um, achieve certain outcomes. We're not like outcome driven.
Yeah,
And so, because at the end of the day, we have to acknowledge like we don't have the ability to control outcomes.
yeah, that's right.
We're not sovereign. We can only set trajectories, but then we have to wait and see what God's going to give.
Yeah.
And so, um, in that sense, being a Christian businessman is great because I'm able to weather pretty difficult situations and just kind of see them as coming from the Lord. I think if you're
Hmm.
facing bankruptcy a lot of times, or even something like COVID, where you're like you were going to lose the farm, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Um, if you're thinking this is in my own strength and I've got to be clever enough to figure this out, or I could have a ruined life or something like that, then yeah,
Mm.
you're going to have a lot of like unchecked anxiety. But if you're like, okay, God's in control, what does He want from me right now? Okay, well, like, what does
Hmm.
faithfulness look like? So for me, that's been the main thing, and it's God's grown me a ton in that, and just being able
Mm,
to trust Him and to rely on Him, and to understand like not that He's always going to keep my business going or like
yeah,
keep my family's financial situation intact. I don't. There's never been a promise of doing that, but He has
yeah,
promised to care for me and provide me what I need as a man to be faithful to Him and to glorify Him. And so, it's been even in fruitful to look down the barrel of things like bankruptcy and financial
hmm,
ruin and things like that, and be like, okay, this may be the path that God has for me. What would it
yeah,
look like to walk faithfully down that
yeah,
path?
yeah,
And to wonder and kind of be and to marvel at like what would God do uh, with me and through me during a situation like that.
hmm,
Um, when it comes to employees, managing employees, whether it's believers or unbelievers, um, being a Christian is also a huge help because
yeah,
I've got a tool set for understanding how people work, what their motivations
hmm,
are, how they operate, and how to speak to the heart. And so, being able to like see through kind of the murkiness to see like what the core issues are that are going on with people is a huge help in
hmm,
managing them and managing
yeah,
expectations.
yeah,
Um, Challenges are really challenges for all believers, which is walking out your testimony, and, having a
yeah,
good reputation with the world, realizing that like everything I as a Christian, everything I say and do in the workplace is a reflection on Christ, and
hmm,
knowing that in the heart of the believer, they're always going to be quick to downplay anything you do that's really noble and good, as
hmm,
like, well, anyone would do that, but then to
yeah,
maybe to overplay like anything you do that's a sinful or shortcoming, to be like, yeah, that's what I expected out of a Christian, kind of a
yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
so, but it's been sweet, I would say, and I'll speak about this in a way where people who've navigated will understand what I'm talking about. But
hmm,
there's been specific cultural changes that have taken place since I started my business in 2010
yeah,
that have made it have produced an interesting and kind of unexpected minefield in
mm,
navigating personnel management
yeah,
within the workplace, navigating social media messaging, things like
hmm,
that.
yeah,
So it's a different world, and if you're young and listening to this, 14 years for selling of in a business, obviously it sounds like a lifetime. But if you're as old as me or older, you'll understand like it's a short time period. It's a short time period for things to have
mm,
changed so
yeah,
quickly.
yeah,
And so a lot of the values and beliefs that we hold because they're biblical and because it's what God tells us,
hmm,
those things were very mainstream and very tolerable 14 years ago, and many of those things
yeah,
are um, very not tolerated now. So there's been just a huge cultural shift, and
yeah,
that's
yeah,
definitely produced some interesting challenges. But I would also say God is faithful, and
amen, yeah,
he's provided avenues for faithfulness for me at every single point, every single challenge, every time I think, this is it. This is the big one. This is the big iceberg that's going to take
yeah,
us down. It's like, no, there's always a way to be faithful. So
yeah. Yeah. Oh, amen. That's good. And you covered challenges and joys and benefits. I was going to go to those next. So thank you for
okay,
covering all of that. And yeah, in a lot of, I'm sure, I would assume it feels like in a lot of ways the same as for any other believer. It's kind of the day that's before us is going to come with its own challenges to just stay faithful to the Lord and whatever arena that's in, right? And just kind of plodding along in that sense while learning and being reminded of how it is God calls us to walk and striving to do that. Yeah. Okay, so uh let me see. Oh, man, time is running out here, but real quick, black hole rainbows. I want to talk about that just briefly here. That is a board game that you created. It's a board game that actually our family was just playing it on our vacation last week. I personally love the game. For those of you who have played the game, I don't know if your families are as ruthless as mine, but once cards are at play, after that first, it is just
Carnage.
people are just it's carnage, man. People just slamming cards down. And I think I told you the way we play is a card being placed is like hitting pause on just time. So everyone has
Yeah,
to stop whatever they're doing. It doesn't matter what they're in the middle of. And it's great. It's great because it keeps the family engaged. There are those who are like, I'll play, but when it's my turn, let me know, and they want to be interested in doing something else. But you can't do that with this, bro. You got to be
you
ready.
can't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which I love about it. I'm actually interested in once either our kids or others start to play it more, getting into like speed black hole rainbow rounds because I think that could be really fun, just kind of flying through somebody.
I'm into
But
it.
yeah, but I'm getting ahead a little bit. Uh, why? What brought about the desire to start your own board game, to create your own board game? It's a better way to put it.
Yeah, I started it all started with a company Christmas party just immediately pre-COVID, and
Okay.
as most ideas do, it started small, and so I was trying to figure out some games that we could all play, some good wholesome games that were like friendly for like group play.
Yeah.
And there was one game I was looking at, and I just felt like it was deficient, and so I was like, I'm just gonna add a couple more rules to this, and then added a couple more rules, and then added a couple little more, and then I was like, this is kind of turned into something different. I should try to. So then I gathered everyone in my office and like, hey, at lunch today we're gonna play this. And, like all the pieces were like I had these little like 1 inch tall dinosaurs in like a jar on my desk. We pulled those out, pulled out a bunch of like dice from Pirates Dice, and we're like, and use like paper bowls. Like that was the original
Oh,
game.
that's
Like that's how
funny.
it was played. And it's kind of like,
That's
hey, that was
funny.
kind of neat, but you could see where like, oh, that doesn't work, that doesn't work. And so
Yeah.
just trying to like get this one idea to like actually work to really, because in a
Yeah.
game, there's all these competing incentives and things. And so you'll think like, oh, this is a great game. And then someone will go to play it and everyone's playing to win. And they'll
Hmm.
break your game, and like do
Yeah.
this other thing. And you're like, well, you're not allowed to do that. And they're like, you didn't say I couldn't do
You didn't
that.
say I
You're
couldn't.
just
Oh,
like,
it's good. Yeah.
that is an excellent point. And so like, playing with some of the guys, Richard Lemon. So the first time I played with all of those
Uh-huh.
guys, game was pretty well developed, but
Uh-huh.
Richard figured out this like combo move and it just dominated the game.
Oh,
And so then
wow.
we played another round and we're like, okay, we got to have a lemon law. We got to have a lemon law here
A lemon law.
because Richard, you broke the game. And so that was really sweet. And so I
Yeah.
didn't really set out to like make a board game, but
Hmm.
once I started creating this game, I really got sucked into the mechanics of it. And at the time, then I was uh, then COVID hit, and so then I had a lot more time at home, and I
Hmm.
think especially with the business kind of being so difficult and requiring just like it was very exacting, like it was required like being just very very disciplined to keep the
Hmm.
business running in such a difficult environment. And so
Yeah.
I think I was looking for a creative outlet as well,
Yeah.
something to work on that really was kind of like was in a different bucket than
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
my main job. And so then, as this game had been developing, I was like, oh, this would be cool to like put some skin on this. And so I was reading a lot of space news at the time, and was like, yeah, that would be fun. It'd be fun to do a space themed one. And you know, the game for those that don't know, in the game you're trying to destroy supermassive black holes, and so it's fun and kind of quirky and space themed, but there's an undercurrent, and only a couple of people have picked up on it. There's an undercurrent, which is you know the the game. This is okay. This is very nerdy. This is a very nerdy cut here, but Stephen Hawking and a lot of like famous astrophysicists and theoretical physics guys basically they presuppose a godless universe, and in
Mm,
their godless universe, they Stephen Hawking specifically proposed that the universe would eventually get gobbled up by supermassive black holes over some
mm,
trillions of years and die like a heat death, and then everything would just disappear in the universe. And there's a bunch of reasons why that doesn't work. The biggest reason is God, and then there's other
yeah.
actual reasons, and so other scientists have even suggested reasons why like that's like not plausible. And so
Hmm.
in my game where we're detonating these supermassive black holes and kind of taking that matter and sending it back out into the universe, like that's
Yeah.
bringing these things back into the order of like God's of the nature and the creation that God made. And so
Nice.
it's a in that way it's a very subtle defiance
Yeah.
against a
I can't say I've
godless
ever thought about that, but that's
worldview.
great. Yeah.
Yeah. No, no, it's not in the game anywhere. It's not written. This is just for
Yeah,
me. Like
nice.
this is my thing. But
That's what I'm talking
it's a
about.
fun game. It's very tactile. If you're thinking, well,
Yeah.
do you have to have a college degree, which I don't have to play the game? No, you don't. Kids can play it. As a matter of fact, sometimes like the 5 and 6 year olds are the best at it.
Oh,
So
I'll
I
tell you
don't.
what, Caius, our
Yeah.
7-year-old, he crushes us often. Yeah. I actually, and one thing I love is I have a copy right here. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
The colors are amazing, bro. And this box is awesome inside the game. I'm gonna do a little more of a kind of review on it. Uh, it'll probably be tied to this video at the end, but the because not but because we are gonna start to do some subscriber giveaways here in the next probably couple months, and Black Hole Rainbows is going to be one of the things we're going to be giving away. So thank you for being willing to do that as well.
Oh, of course.
One of the other things we're going to be giving away is a copy of Michael Regina's book, The Sleepover. He's agreed to donate a copy of that as well. So I'll talk more about that later. But Black Hole Rainbows, super fun game. I like
Thanks,
it,
bro.
and I'm even toying around with the idea of from what you think about this, of a subscriber giveaway. I've been doing stone carving, you know that, and I've been
Yeah.
posting some videos on that because some of my students wanted to see some of the process. I'm toying around with the idea of doing like a soapstone carving of one of the pieces and
Ooh,
letting
that would
that
be
be
cool.
away. I think that'd be kind of cool, but
That'd be
we'll
very
see.
cool.
We'll see. Time may prove for that not to be the case, but cool. All right, so man, so advice for youth, middle schooler, high schooler. Obviously, adults will benefit from this, but middle schooler, high schooler who wants to start a business, whether at this age or in the future would like to start a business, what would be kind of your quick advice to them?
Yeah. The best thing you can do if you want to start a business is to get a job working for another small business.
Nice.
So that was that, and that's my dad. That was my dad's advice to me. And so when I wanted to start a
Okay.
coffee shop, my dad said, "Okay, great. You need to go work the dish pit at a restaurant first, so you can understand the hard part of this, and you can
Yeah.
see the behind the scenes." And he was absolutely right. And so, years before I started the Hippo, I went and worked the dish pit for the summer at a busy restaurant, and
Nice.
so. And not and that's not the answer you want to hear. Like obviously you want to develop plans. You want to create. There's another thing called like a minimum viable product
Mm,
that you want to work on, and that's depending on what you're making and what your business is. What I do even now, I'm testing new stuff all the time, like new
mm,
potential businesses, and most of it never gets off the ground. No one will ever see it, but I'm like trying things all the time, and what I'm always thinking of is like what is a test that I can do that would cost the least amount of time and money, but give me actual like good data on like is this a viable idea?
yeah.
So an example would be like if like let's say you've developed you really want it to be like a cotton candy business, and you want to do like crazy cotton candy faces like some of the people that are on YouTube, right? And
Uh,
you're like this will be really fun. Well, if you just like set up a cotton candy stand and invite all your friends and family over and sell it all to them, you're gonna think like this is amazing. I'm gonna be like a billionaire. This is great because like all those people they want to support you. They think it's really
yeah.
neat. They're kind of amazed that you can do something like that. And that's great, but that's not really like a minimum viable test. At the
Mm,
same time, if you like geared up and like got like a decent tent, got some decent branding, which is easier now to get than ever, got a couple little signs made up, even if you're just printing them or like painting them or whatever, there's cheap ways to do
hmm
everything. And you
hmm
can get a stall like at a farmer's market, or you can even go set up like at a high school football game or something and
Yeah.
like sell to strangers, even just for a few minutes. The feedback you're going to get from that is just going to be like incredible. And so if you knock it out of the
Sweet.
park there, then it's like, okay, this is something to work on. That's not a final product, but that's minimum viable product. And so,
Mm,
I was working on a design for some machine that I wanted to build at one point. And one of my dad's friends, who's a he invents candy making machines. I had lunch with him, and I was like, how do I get started on this? And I was thinking like, I need to learn 3D CAD. I need to get a 3D printer. I need to start doing all this stuff. And he was like, you need to go buy a sheet of plywood from Home Depot and a bunch of screws and brackets. And he's like, whatever it is you're thinking about making, he's like, make like a really big, like very like it's not a final product, it's not beautiful, but like make a working version of it
Mm.
in like the cheapest, most accessible way, so you can actually see if like what you're aiming at is
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's the same thing. If you go back to the
Makes
cotton
sense.
candy thing too, it's like someone might be thinking, well, I need to buy this like $1,000 cotton candy shaping tool set so that I can do this thing. And it's like maybe, or maybe you could rent a cotton candy machine from a local like,
Yeah.
party supply place and
Hmm.
like try this out for a lot less money to see if
Yeah.
like that's a direction. And so it's a combination of minimum viable product with getting some actual real world experience
That's cool.
in whatever industry that you're thinking about going into. And
Yeah.
almost like 9 times out of 10, there's someone out there that's willing to let you, you know, hold a wrench or dig a ditch or clean a dish
Yeah.
or do something even for free, and that'll be invaluable.
Yeah. That's good, man. And I love where you started with that because you to know the hard part of whatever it is that you're wanting to do, and even if it's on the same industry, to just create, especially for like a youth, to just create a really disciplined work ethic that you're going to work hard in the moments when it's not fun, in the moments when you're getting dirty, in the moments where you're not making any money or much money at all, right? And
Yeah.
barely breaking even. And what's going to get you through that? And that work ethic, I think, is a missing component sometimes. But that's all helpful advice. Fun advice for a middle schooler or a high schooler. Just a- any it could be any arena, any category. Just fun advice for a middle schooler or high schooler. And
Um,
if you need to narrow it in a little bit, maybe fun advice for, I've asked it this way, for even a middle schooler preparing for high school.
wow. There's so many thoughts that swim through my mind of the advice that I needed when I was in middle school. And maybe the advice for middle school boys is different than for middle school girls.
Maybe, yeah, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, for middle school boys, yeah, remember to put on deodorant. Yeah,
I
and I'm just
second
kidding,
that.
but
Yeah.
that was a real issue. I just remembered that, and but
Yeah.
for middle schoolers preparing to go into high school, the advice you'll hear from me is the same you'd hear from almost any adult, which is just slow down.
Mm,
Your mind is tempted to run a million miles a minute. You're tempted.
yeah.
I know I fell into the trap of just believing that my sphere that I was in was everything. That I really
Mm,
kind of the people that I was around and how I thought about myself, whether that's online or people in person, was I just thought it was so important. And so
mm,
I frequently spent time and energy worrying about and thinking about like how I was presenting myself, and not in like actually like investing in myself and specifically not spending time in God's word, not even like doing like reading and others like self-discipline things that like help build you up. But I was really focused on like the here and now. And
mm,
so that's the main thing is just to slow down and realize like, hey, this is, you could be unknown in middle school. As a matter of fact, you could be unknown to anyone in high school and
mm,
still end up being like and maybe as a result of that, as a result of the time that you're putting in towards like fruitful activities and things that matter,
mhm,
realize that like end up gifting your adult self with um a, some habits and some self-control and maybe even like a body that's in shape and a mind that's been well worked and is well prepared for
mhm,
a adulthood. And it's like, oh, and then in that season it's like, oh great, and now I'm ready to start a family and find a spouse and have children, and I want to
yeah.
be and I want to have a fruitful job. And so all the things that people really end up desiring later, you're laying the groundwork for it
Yeah.
now. And
That's
so I
good.
would just say like our culture really tries to draw a line between like adolescence and adulthood in the sense of like do whatever you want, just be a kid now, and you can be an adult later. And I
Mm.
would say like you need to be thinking about the things you can be. Yeah, you are a kid, so you have fun. It's okay to read a comic book. It's okay to,
Yeah.
like it's okay to play some video games with friends. But be thinking about like how can I even do this with self-control, and specifically
Right.
for believers or those people that are in the church, like how can I do this in a way that glorifies God? How can I consider God in each of my
Yeah.
thoughts and each of my actions?
Yeah.
And if you do that now, if you can consider God now and have a
Mm,
renewed mind in that
yeah.
way, you are going to live a life of like peace and joy and blessing,
Amen.
no matter what, how difficult your circumstances might
Yeah.
be. And
Yeah.
that's what it's all about. So
Amen. Yeah, that's good. That's great. That's all great advice. And I've mentioned this, we haven't mentioned this yet, but you have been blessed with a great wife and two kids and a third one on the way. And
yeah,
it, maybe just to give, that helps give context to everything that we've been talking about, that you're striving to be a faithful and are a faithful husband and father and even seminary student. Shout out to Expositor Seminary.
yep,
Uh, and you have a few more years there, but yeah, just you've got a lot of things going on, even just personally, that as you're giving that advice to middle schoolers and high schoolers, you're living a lot of those things out now. All right, quick fun facts. Quick fun facts. It's kind of like a lightning round, but I'm calling it quick fun facts because everyone calls it a
okay.
lightning round. So uh, favorite dessert?
Churros.
Okay, yes. Have you ever had the churro waffles at that place on St. Augustine Road by 95? Not 95, what is it?
Mm,
US 1, I think, in Old St. Augustine Road, or that sound familiar?
no.
Really? We never, oh, we'll talk later. I'm gonna run out of time.
Okay.
We'll talk. Please remind me because it's unreal. All right,
Okay.
favorite color?
Green.
Green, okay. Dream job. If you could be doing absolutely anything,
I'm already doing it.
already doing it. Man, everyone says that.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. You already did fun advice. All right. Favorite Bible verse, and most impactful sermon or sermon series on your own life.
Yeah, that's a good one. I would say favorite Bible verse. I'd probably just shove I'll probably put Psalm 73 in the
Mm,
chapter as like my favorite Bible verse.
yeah.
Psalm 73, just to remember that even though like um there the world around you looks like they're doing okay and they look like they're doing well, even though they defy God. But
Mm,
we have to come to God's word. We have to come into worship with God to see
yeah.
the truth of reality. And so that's
Yep.
such a grounding passage.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
I love that passage right in the middle when it just shifts. It's like a breath of fresh
That's
air.
it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
Tramway actually, the first sermon I think he preached at Grace. Think before he actually came, before he like was hired on, I'm pretty sure that's a song that he preached on. It was the first sermon I heard preached on that. So yeah, great. Sorry,
I
keep
didn't
going.
know that. That's
Yeah,
sweet.
yep.
Yeah. And then most impactful sermon or sermon series. Um, we were at a pursuit retreat once, and Jaron Roberts, who's now out in Katy,
Yeah, yeah.
he did a whole series on basically like self control and purity.
Mm,
And I just remember like so vividly being in that room, and especially with a lot of like, young single people, and like
yeah.
this is a battle for everyone. And I just remember how clear his the word was, and how like I just remember this picture of him saying like, should I start a fire in like the middle of this room? Like, would it be
Mm,
helpful? Do does the fire belong in the fireplace, or does it belong on the living room floor? And
mm.
it was just
That's
like
good.
I mean, it just still sticks with me of like, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Like God's like it's critical to follow God's prescribing methods and means for all things. And
Yeah.
we uh, when we try to do things our own way, we're taking something good that God made, like the
Hmm.
fire, and we're putting it where it doesn't belong, and it's only going to cause destruction. So
Yeah. That's good. That's good. That's was I'm trying to think. I don't remember if I helped with the music that year or not. Did you do more than one college retreat, or was it just the one? If it was
I
just the
did
one, then
just
I was
one.
there for it. Okay. Wasn't there like a big swan or a big like
Yeah, that's right. Like
right?
the duck,
The duck, yeah.
the purity
I was
duck or
there.
whatever it was.
Yes, yep, I was there. I wasn't there for the whole thing, but I popped in. I popped in for a night. I think I brought a family member out there for it. But
Yeah,
uh
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
That
yeah.
was sweet. That was a sweet time.
It's really
And
good.
so many other ones. I'm just picking that one out. I'm like
Oh
that one
yeah,
sticks out, but obviously, there's
that's great.
been so richly
Yeah,
blessed.
yeah, yeah. Awesome, man. Well, brother, this has been fun. This has been fun. I'm glad we're able to do
It's been
this.
great.
I've been wanting to do this for a while, and I love podcasts personally. I love listening to podcasts, and there's some some of my favorite ones have to do with business owners talking about how they started and CEOs and how they think through different things. And uh, so often, as a believer, I'm listening and I'm like, oh man, I want to hear someone think through and talk through some of these things, recognizing God's sovereignty in it, recognizing His goodness and grace, recognizing that they're not the end all be all. And a lot of these people that are here interviewed, I mean, there are some that are believers, and they're not all like these, just arrogant guys that are or guys and ladies that are talking, but man, when we're doing things to honor the Lord, when we're doing things for His glory and not our own, it's a different ball game. It's an eternal ball game, right? And so,
Yeah.
yeah, thanks for your encouragement in all of that, and just for taking all of this time, bro. And again, I'm going to talk more about the Black Hole Rainbows game separately. I'm out of time right now, but yeah, just thank you for doing this.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. It's good to get to hang.
Yeah. All right, brother. We'll talk soon.
All right. See you, bro.
Bye.
Bye.